Hello, and welcome back to Nerd News. Today we have an announcement from Phil Spencer regarding Call of Duty and Nintendo, and we have Margot Robbie saying that she would love to do the Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy romance in live action. Let's get started. First up, we have the Phil Spencer announcement, and as you can see here, Microsoft has entered into a 10-year commitment to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo following the merger of Microsoft and Activision Blizzard King. Microsoft is committed to helping bring more games to more people, whoever they choose to play. This is a big deal because Nintendo hasn't had Call of Duty on a successful console pretty much ever. Call of Duty was on the Wii, but it was very different. And then on the Wii U, no one bought it because no one bought a Wii U. So this would be a big deal if it came to something like, say, the Switch. While we all expect at this point for the Switch to be coming towards the end of its life cycle soon, a 10-year deal means that Nintendo will have Call of Duty through its next console's lifespan, basically. And while this is obviously just a strategic move from Xbox to kind of show that Sony's issue with them not getting Call of Duty anymore is not true, because now they have commitments with other third parties, so basically everyone will be guaranteed Call of Duty for the next 10 years. That doesn't really matter, because I don't think they actually care about having Call of Duty be an exclusive game. The game's too big. They obviously want it everywhere. Realistically, they want Call of Duty to put it into Game Pass, because then Game Pass becomes immensely valuable. Not only does basically everyone buy Call of Duty at this point, but it also it would be free for those people. People would subscribe to Game Pass just for Call of Duty. It would pretty much be worth it at that point. But this doesn't really affect what Sony's issue is. Sony's issue with Microsoft owning Call of Duty is that it's going to go to Game Pass. And from what I understand, the issues that are holding up this deal seem to be the Game Pass stuff, where there's just not a whole lot of competition in that space. I still think the deal is going to go through, and I think this is a ploy to kind of push for the deal to go through, because currently it's not on Nintendo. Call of Duty is just not on Nintendo platforms, and I mean, that's fine, I guess. I'm not going to play Call of Duty on the Switch. I don't see why you would, unless you just don't have another option, but it's cool. It's cool to see, and I mean, if this deal is going to go through anyway, at least something good is coming out of it, where Call of Duty is going to be everywhere, and it's pretty much guaranteed. I'm not really a big fan of all these huge mergers. It's one thing with these smaller studios that are, need help funding. Activision didn't really need a buyout, or at least shouldn't need a buyout unless it's just being run poorly with the way Call of Duty is. So I'm not really a fan of this merger to begin with, but if it's going to happen, and it's going to happen, this is probably the best outcome we can hope for. And next up, we have some Funko Pops for Pokemon. And while I personally don't collect Pops anymore, I know there's a couple back here, but I don't really buy them anymore. They take up too much space, and I just stopped caring. These ones are really cool. A Munchlax is probably one I will pick up, and I didn't buy any of the other EVs, so I'm probably not picking up Espeon. Oshawott is also cool, but why Oshawott? Of all the starters that we don't have, I feel like Oshawott's the odd one out. Why would you pick Oshawott? I guess maybe it's just because I don't like the Oshawott line that much. I mean, Oshawott itself is cute, and I like that one, but I don't like the rest of the line, so maybe that's why I don't really want it. Where's the Totodile? Maybe there is a Totodile, and I don't know about it. I don't know. I want the Munchlax, though. These are cool. Just, more Pokemon merchandise, because we can never have enough Pokemon merchandise, right? And next up, in a report from comicbook.com, we have Margot Robbie wants Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy romance to happen in live action. I've been pushing for that for years, she says. I cannot tell you how hard I've been pushing for that. And I mean, it's already in the cartoon, the Harley Quinn show, which is a good show, by the way. You should definitely watch the show. But since they kind of moved away from the Joker, which is good, because I think they need to take a break from the Joker, just in general, just let him go for a while. I understand it's really popular, but Joker's overused right now. Let it go for a little bit. And I guess you could make the same argument that Harley Quinn's been overused for a while right now, but she's turned more anti-hero or hero than villain, and having the same villain all the time gets a little monotonous. Batman has so many good villains. We could live without the Joker for the next decade without it ever being a real problem, in my opinion. So let the Joker go for a little bit, and I mean, do the Harley Quinn and Ivy. It's one of the comic book fandom's like favorite relationships, especially in a not heterosexual relationship, since those are just not in comics really ever, and it's one they won't complain about. I mean, they'll still complain, but not as much. They'll complain less, and that's always good. We let them not complain as much. It's something. It's a start. And I mean, who doesn't want to see Poison Ivy in live action? Like, we had one live action Poison Ivy, and as much as I like Uma Thurman, it's like a really old movie and not a very good one to begin with, and not a very good anything about that movie. So a more modern take, and one done by James Gunn, who can probably, or not necessarily done by him, but one supervised by James Gunn, who can probably make an actual good movie happen at DC for the first time in 10 years, would be a nice change of pace. And next up, we have a couple new Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and first we have a new Sky Striker Link. This is a Link 2 Dark Machine effect monster, 1500 attack. Top left and bottom right arrows. Two materials are 2 light and or dark monsters. So I believe that means you have to use the main deck monsters for this. You can't use any of the extra deck links. Must be link summoned. You can only special summon Sky Shaker, Ace, Azalea once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can target one card on the field, destroy it. Then, if you have 3 or less spells in your graveyard, send this card to the graveyard. Once per turn, at the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monsters, you can banish one spell from your graveyard, destroy that opponent's monster. This is pretty good, and I'm sure it's going to be just wonderful in Sky Striker decks. But I want to talk about this card outside of Sky Striker decks. This is sort of generic. It's just 2 lights and or dark monsters. So a light and a dark, or 2 lights, 2 darks. Which is a very easy requirement on a Link 2. And it doesn't really require any kind of Sky Striker support. None of its effects have anything to do with Sky Strikers, except for the fact that you can only summon 1 per turn. Its first effect is on summon, destroy a card. I mean, that's like a better Nightmare Phoenix and Cerberus, just kind of tied into one. And it has a down-pointing arrow, which isn't the most relevant thing now that we don't need link arrows for other extra deck mechanics, but it's still something. And it doesn't require the discard, so that's good. And then if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, or 3 or less spells in your graveyard, you send this card to the graveyard. Obviously, that's a downside, but at the same time, you probably have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, like more than 3 spells in your graveyard. It's not that hard of a requirement. So I don't think that's necessarily the worst thing in the world. This seems like a pretty good card, and it destroys anything, just a card, not monsters, not spell traps, just a card. And then it does have a second effect, which is also pretty good. Once per turn at the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can banish a spell and destroy that card. Again, in Sky Strikers, that's a little bit not as good because you don't really want to be banishing your spell cards, but at the same time, outside of Sky Strikers, you can banish all your spell cards. Who cares? Most of them aren't doing anything in the grave anyway. So that's a pretty good effect, and you can just ram into things that you have trouble getting over. It just seems like it has a lot more utility than like outside of Sky Striker decks than I think people might realize initially. This just seems like a really good generic Link 2 that will see some play just outside of Sky Striker decks just as a good card. Not to mention, you can also just use this to link into other Sky Striker links, which isn't the most notable because, I mean, what are you really going to link into if you're not playing other Sky Striker cards? But that makes the Sky Striker small, like, little engine a little bit more viable. I could see this being played in a lot of decks that just use light or dark monsters or the combination. This seems really, really good in a generic sense, and we might be a little past when this card would have been like a staple in the extra deck, but I still think it'll see a decent amount of play just as a generic card. Inside of Sky Strikers is obviously going to see play. This is a great card for that deck specifically, but I think just as a generic card, this card has a lot of utility. And next we have a new equip spell for the Crystal Beast archetype, and it's called the Golden Rule.
days back.
For some reason. This card is always treated as a crystal card, so it is completely searchable. You can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. Fine. 1. Place 2 Crystal Beast monsters from your deck face up in your spell trap zone as continuous spells. Then special summon 1 Crystal Beast monster from your hand or graveyard with a different name from those cards. And if you do, equip it with this card. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. This is insane. It just plays 2 from the deck. Like, it's not that hard to get a Crystal Beast into the grave. Just any kind of discarding effect, or there's a million ways to just get a Crystal Beast into the grave. And then you just get to play 2 of your better back row Crystal Beast right into the spell trap zones. And then if you have like a Ruby Carbuncle, I think special summons them, or there's a ton of cards that just use the back row card. This is really good. I don't think it'll be a 3 of, just because you have to have some setup and it is a once per turn. And it's incredibly searchable, but this is still a really strong card. There's also a bunch of other cards that were shown here, but none of them really stick out to me as being anything more than anime cards, but I do really like this new Crystal Beast card. I think this is going to be really good for the deck, and considering they just got a structure deck, it's good to see we're getting a little bit more support since the structure deck didn't really fix the deck. Anyway, that's all the news for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. And let me know what you think we're going to see tonight in the Game Awards. Hopefully we get some good announcements. And we'll be back tomorrow with more nerd news. Bye.
You guys are still here.